Welcome back to Bible in a Year. I'm glad that you're here. Today we're going to look briefly at the intertestamental period, that whole 400 years that passed between the time that Malachi ends and Matthew starts, because during that 400-year period, a whole lot of things changed historically for the Jews in Palestine. Therefore, when we go from the Old Testament world to the New Testament world, we find ourselves in an entirely different world. And I want you to feel ready for that. Now, I'm going to be compressing here pretty seriously. I'm going to be compressing. But if I don't, this is going to be like a 45, 70-minute video, and you won't watch it, and I can't make it. So, when we left the Old Testament, the Jews were under the domination of the Persians. And then in 322 BC, thanks to Alexander the Great, Jerusalem fell to the Greeks. And then the Jews came under the domination of the Egyptians. This was after Alexander the Great died, and Ptolemy was one of Alexander the Great's generals. Anyway, the Egyptians took over Palestine, and they were led by the Ptolemies. And then the Syrians overthrew the Ptolemies. Now, with the Syrians comes one of the most horrible periods of all time for God's people. The temple was desecrated. Statues of false gods were erected in the temple itself. It was generally really bad. So this brought about the next period of Jewish history, which is called the time of the Maccabees. And the Maccabean family was this really incredibly remarkable family. It was a great family. And the Maccabees led a revolt that led to religious freedom for all of the Jews. And the Jews were allowed to worship as they pleased, with nobody trying to stop them. And they were free politically, with nobody trying to dominate them. And this lasted for about 30 years. And it was during this time that the Pharisees and the Sadducees emerged as pretty important religious political parties. But then and other things happened, like synagogue worship really got going strong. He got a real shot in the arm. And then in 63 BC, a Roman general named Pompey came on the scene. And the period of Jewish independence came to an end, and Judea became a province of the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire ruled pretty much the entire known world at the time of Christ. So by the time the New Testament begins, we have Pharisees and Sadducees and Essenes and Zealots, which are not only religious groups, they're also political groups. They're like a combination of a denomination and a political party. We've got scribes, who are like lawyers of religious law. So they hang out a lot with the Pharisees, who were deeply concerned for correct observance of the law. And the whole system of doing local worship in the synagogue has developed, and you have rabbis, and you also have tax collectors or publicans, as they used to be called, or farmers, tax farmers. And you have Samaritans, and you have Romans. And if you don't know what any of these names or concepts mean, then you should look them up, because I can go on and on and on forever, and you will be so bored. But now at least I hope you have a better idea of what happened with God's people in the intervening 400 years between the end of Malachi and the beginning of Matthew. Thanks a lot for coming, and I will see you soon.